Today, I had the privilege to speak with Brandon from Car Questions Answered, a YouTube channel that's completely blown up in the last couple of months. We discussed the used car market, the new car market, the reason why things got so crazy the past couple of years with the pandemic and the chip shortage, why they haven't really settled down quite yet, when they will settle down, how Tesla's massive new price drop will affect the new and used car market, and when to buy a car. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I have the good fortune to be with Brandon today from Car Questions Answered, which is a channel that, what is it, about 5 months old, but holy mackerel, it's blown up. I just saw one of your videos has over 1 million views now, which is just like, apparently everybody wants to have their car questions answered.
It
So,
is crazy. We really appreciate all the support, and it's really blown us away. And I don't
yeah.
know what to do next, so that's where we're at right now.
There you go. Well, maybe we can talk about that today. Who knows? Anyway, I
Yeah.
will definitely put a link to a couple of your videos in the description so people can find out. And of course, go and subscribe to your channel because that's awesome. So, you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So we're not too far away, I guess, maybe 3 hours ish by car between the two of us. And you specialize in used cars in particular, but it looks like you have a really good insight into new cars as well. So I guess maybe like why, first of all, let's start with like, why the heck did you decide to start this channel? You know, it's not something that everybody does.
Yeah, so the original arrangement we wanted to do was to do a podcast, and I had a buddy that actually pushed me to do it because we play disc golf a lot, and he asked me a lot of questions about the car market. And he's like, "Dude, people need to know about this stuff." So we started this thing where he had a little audio experience. So we did a podcast, and he ended up throwing it on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a YouTube account, and I want to try to help people know how to buy a car, when to buy a car. So I did a couple of videos of just following the car market because, as we all know, it's been crazy, and trying to help people know how to buy a car, what's going on behind the scenes, why prices are so crazy. And it just kind of blew up from there. And really, my goal is to just be able to get information to people to help them know how to buy a car and not get ripped off by a lot of these dealers, a lot of these mechanics. So my goal is just to help in any way I can do that. That's what I want to do.
Very, very cool. And like I said, obviously a lot of people really want to have their car questions answered because it seems to be very, very popular and it's taken off quickly. So what was the most surprising part about it for you? Like, you know, did you expect to have like nobody watch and then as always, the first couple videos you get a couple hundred views from your friends and stuff like that.
Right.
But then when did it start to take off? Like when did you start to go like, oh my gosh, this might be a real thing?
So I think it was like either the second or third video I did, and it was a longer video. It took me a long time to make it to edit because I'd never done anything like that before. So the
Right.
editing part was just absolutely crazy. And so I think it was actually the third video I did. But I went into an auction, showed what an auction looks like. I talked about seasonality of used vehicles, talked about chip shortage, why prices are crazy, just tried to cover the whole used car market in like a 16-minute video. And that video stayed online. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, and it had like 200 views. And then just like overnight, it went to 80,000 views. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
no clue, no clue.
That's
We tried to look
cool.
up to see if there was any background information, if somebody shared it on a particular website or whatever. We couldn't find
Right.
that. So I don't know. I guess we just are very blessed, and somebody
Yeah.
said that our information needed to be out there. So
Yeah, obviously it does. It's the personally like the part that I find the most fascinating is you going to the auctions because it's just an insight into a whole part of cars. You know, I've been buying cars since I was an adult, but I didn't know anything about that whole end of it. So maybe just you know, not to give away too much from your videos, but like just give kind of like an overview of what the auction process is. So you have a used car dealership, correct? And
right, yeah.
do you get most of your stock from these auctions, or do people trade in cars, or like, you
It's like 99%
know?
that we get from auction. We'll
Okay.
get a trade in every once in a while, but we don't like taking trade ins because that's one other element of the used car market that literally we have to rip somebody off to take their trade in. So we tell our customers, I
Right.
mean, we get people want to trade in cars to us every week, but we're like, look, if we take your car, we're going to rip you off. So
Right.
go sell it yourself. You'll get more money out of it. and then you can come buy a car from us. So
Yeah.
a
Okay.
lot of other dealers, I would say they're probably skewed probably 90% auction, probably 10% trade in, but we're probably
Okay.
99% auction.
Gotcha. It is an interesting thing. I think a lot of people just do it for convenience, but obviously if a car is worth $15,000, you can't pay me $15,000 when I bring it in because you got to sell it for 15 or 16,000.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean, obviously I'm going to get less than I would if I sold it as a private party.
And if
Yeah.
when you talk in trade-ins, the new car dealers, they're more skewed the other way where a lot of their used vehicles are all trade-ins. They don't go and buy cars off the street. Now, in the last 2 years, they have. In the last 2 years, they bought cars from auction. But usually, if you see a used vehicle on a new car, a franchise dealer lot, it's a
Right.
trade-in.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the most common thing is when you buy a new car, you do that. But of course,
Right.
and I guess they have a little bit more wiggle room because if they're overcharging you for the new car, they can afford to give you a little bit more for the old one, or something like that.
Or they
Um,
just get you on
yeah,
both ends. Yeah.
yeah, they get you on both ends,
Yeah.
which is what I've generally discovered. So tell me or tell us about the used car auction sort of market. Like, how many of these auction houses are there in the country? Like,
Ooh.
is there like 3 of them like within 10 miles of you, or is it like 30 in the whole country, or
So I can't give you what the number is across the country. I have no clue, but I know
right?
that just within an hour radius of where I am, we can hit 9. There's 9 around us, and that's around the Charlotte area. So, and that's not
Gotcha.
including insurance sales. That's not including any of the salvage sales or public auctions because I don't hit any of those. I just do dealer specific only auctions.
Right.
So, I mean, just in our radius, there's it easy 10. So there's got to
Wow.
be just a massive amount of these
Right.
auction houses across the
Right.
country.
Okay. That's so interesting. And the process is what? So if I was let's say a new car dealer, and when would people put it on auction first? Let's start with that. So who would be the person or the company that's putting it on auction, and when would they do that?
Okay, so how a vehicle makes it to auction. So when you go in and you buy a brand new car, you go in and buy a new Toyota Camry. You'll take in your old Camry, your 2005 Camry, and go trade it in. And obviously, that new car dealer doesn't want a 17-year-old car on their lot. They're not going to sell that car at a new
Right.
car franchise dealer. So they send it straight to auction, and it's put in a lot where dealers like myself can check out that 2005 Camry, and then the auction will run. This car will run through lane. Some auctions have 1 lane, some auctions have 16 lanes, and
Oh my
each
gosh.
lane has a specific auctioneer for them. They usually have a floor guy that's yelling at you too, trying to get you to bid on the car. But the car will run through there. We'll bid on it. If I'm the high bid on a 2005 Camry right now with 180,000 miles, I mean, the prices are still crazy. It's going to be $2,500, $3,000, somewhere around there.
Jeez.
We'll win the bid on the car. We'll get it transported from the auction to my lot. We'll get it. We'll do recon. We'll get it prepped to for sale. We'll get it inspected. Some states don't need inspection. Our state, I need to get emissions and safety inspection done on it. And once I do that, we detail it and then we put it online. And we typically mark up our cars anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 more than what
Right.
we have in them at that point, and that's what we sell
Right.
them for.
Right. Gotcha. So it all makes sense in that case. So, but you said that, so a lot of the cars that go up for auction are just cars that the dealerships will take trade-ins for, but they're just not interested in. Yeah, I can see, like, if you're a fancy new car dealership, you don't want like some beat up old car, on the lot with. So they want to have like the trade-ins that are maybe a couple of years old with 25,000 miles on them or something like that look good. So, yeah, we were actually searching for a used truck for our son last year during the height of the insanity. And even then, when the stock was so low, they had kind of a back parking lot where they had, the ones that were older that had
Right.
over
Yeah.
100,000 miles on them. They don't put those up
Those
near
were
the
getting
street.
ready to go to auction, but they just
Right.
got you at the right time to look at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. They didn't really, of course they don't say that. They're just like, oh yeah, we haven't really done anything with this
Right.
car yet, but probably it was planning on going to auction. So yeah. So why have, okay. So let's go back a little bit because I think things are changing and that's the interesting part right now. But minus like 5 or 6 months ago, why were things so completely insane in terms of both new and used cars?
So, I mean, the big thing was just supply and demand issues. There was no new cars coming out, so it's kind of with used vehicles, it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing because you need demand on the new car dealer side
Right.
to put inventory into the used car dealer side because we need those trade-ins to be able to keep the prices low to have more inventory. So
Right.
I think about this a lot of times, and it's a hypothetical thing, but if this whole pandemic thing didn't happen, but the Fed still lowered the interest rates down to zero, if the
Right.
government still pumped so much money to people and they were able to buy new cars like they had been, used car prices wouldn't have gone up because there would have been so much inventory because people are buying new cars and trading in their old stuff that we would
Right.
have so much used car inventory that the prices would have stayed stable and they probably would have gone down because people would be trading up versus
Right.
trying to just find a car anywhere.
Okay. And so that's one of the things is you've seen kind of a pressure on the lower end of the market where people are like, I don't have enough money, so what I want to do is just, get into a car in the least expensive way possible to get what I need. So
Right,
yeah,
and if
okay,
there's no trade-ins, then those cars just don't exist. Even right
right,
now, since there's no demand for these new cars, because the new car dealers aren't selling a whole lot of cars right now, we're
right,
not getting trade-ins. So the lower end used cars are still staying elevated, and they will until we get some kind of influx of inventory.
gotcha. Okay, and yeah, so like it seems like everything has become very destabilized. Like I live close to, I don't know, 5 or 6 dealerships, just on the road. And during the height of the pandemic, the parking lots were, or the chip shortage, 2021, the lots were just empty. There was like 2 or 3 cars that
Right.
the new car dealers had for sale. But now I'm seeing a lot of cars in the parking lot, which indicates to me that there's a lot of cars coming in now in the new car market. But that's not really helping the used car market at all, I guess. Okay. Because people
And
aren't buying the new
really,
cars
you're not
or
having a yeah, you're not having a ton of cars come in the system. You're having cars not being sold.
okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
so yeah, what's happening? A lot of the used car dealers, their lots are filling up too
Right.
because sales are just dropping off because people can't get loans. Last year, these banks were loaning 140% value of the vehicles to get them
Right.
to get cars on the road. And now they've cut back to a more traditional model where it's 80%. So on a $16,000 car, if a dealer has $12,000 in it, they're trying to sell it for 16 grand. The car value is worth $10,000. The bank's only
Right.
loaning $8,000 on it, so the customer has to come up with an $8,000 down payment.
Right.
They can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'll definitely put a link to that because that was actually a good video. You kind of break it down on a whiteboard and it's
Yeah.
like really good. Uh but yeah, so I mean, when you're looking at somebody who's looking to purchase a $15,000 car, they don't have $8,000 in cash just lying around, in their house,
Yeah.
right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And if you do have that much money, generally you're probably going to be looking at a new car or a more expensive used car. So
Right.
yeah, so it really, and then of course the problem is the people who want to buy the new car or the more expensive used car, the interest rates are still high, which means that for the same, I don't know, I haven't done the math in my head, but just kind of guessing, you could, if you bought a $50,000 car before, with the interest rates higher, that might only get you a $40,000 car for the same monthly payment, or $43,000 car, something like that. So your ability to purchase a car goes significantly down wherever you're looking, high end, low end, whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. And I just did a video on CarMax and they released earnings and said that even from a year ago, the average monthly payment that is running through their system right now is $150 more than what it was a
Oof.
year ago. So it
Wow.
was already high a year ago, but then
Right.
let's tack on an extra $150. And I mean, inflation's everywhere. So I mean, the
Yeah.
cost of living is just so high that people can't afford these monthly payments for these cars.
Right. Do you I hate to ask this question, but you can treat it like a little bit like unspecifically. But do you come across people at your dealership who are just desperate to get a car, but it's just outside of their reach at this point?
So on my lot, we sell cars that are $5,000 and under for the most part. So
Right.
we get a demographic of the population that's they're able to scrape together. Like we are the desperation place
Right.
for most people. So they've been able to scrape together $2,500 or whatever to come buy a car, and we can get them in a car for that usually. Um, but I mean, if they had the option, they would be trying to go finance a car, get payments on it for the most part.
Right.
There now we have some customers that are smart about their finances. They're like, I've bought cars from buy here, pay here places, and I miss a payment, and they just
Yeah.
come
It's
take
like
it.
it's
So
gone. Yeah.
I would rather just own my car. So I've scraped together $2,500, $3,000 car, $3,000, and I want to own my car now and not have to
Right.
owe anybody any money. So that's when we come in to try to help with that kind of consumer.
Gotcha. Okay. So generally speaking, you don't have as much financing in that sort of realm of purchasing as a lot of other. I mean, certainly a used dealership that was selling $25,000 plus cars or new cars, most of
They
their
have to get
business is gonna,
financing.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I make a decent salary. I still have to finance my cars. It's not like I just have,
Right.
30, $40,000 lying around to purchase a car. So yeah, so it seems like you actually might be in a little bit, except of course, are you selling your stock or not? Or is your problem getting vehicles or is your problem selling them at this point?
So it had over the last like year and a half, we've had problems scraping together these cars. And even last year at around tax time, I had to break my what we typically do, and we had cars for $7,000, $8,000 out on our lot, and I hated it. It felt
Right,
so bad.
right,
I didn't
right.
my customers, I mean, they still bought the cars, but I just didn't feel good about it. This year, it's much different. There's a little bit more inventory, and we've been able to find stuff. So loading up for this tax time, we're able to have all of our cars. I think the most expensive thing we have on our lot is a $5,500 car.
Okay,
So right
okay.
now, inventory is not necessarily a problem for us in particular. Our sales have dropped off. It seems like a little bit just this month, but they always do this time of year. But
Right,
December,
right,
we had the best December we've ever had, and I think it's in large part because a lot of these dealers are stuck in their ways for the last 2 years. They're over leveraged and they
right.
think they can sell these cars for a higher amount. And we've started lowering our prices already. And I think that's why we've been able to be so successful in the last month and a half, where all these
Okay.
other dealers are suffering right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. Before I continue on, tell me, so the other piece of this puzzle is, of course, that at least for new car dealers, and I guess also for used cars as well, most companies don't purchase these with cash, right? They usually purchase them on some sort of, you get
Right.
30 days and then you have to start paying back something on these loans. So you're taking it out via loans. So that means that the car dealerships, used or new, are really leveraged, right? If they purchase 10 cars at
Yes.
$40,000 each to sell to the consumer, that's $400,000 that they've got on loan. And if those cars don't sell within a certain period of time, they have to start paying on those, right? I think one of the
Yeah.
one
So
of the, I don't know if
most
it's, go
dealers,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah, most dealers, they don't own their cars. They actually
Right.
go through what's called a floor plan company, and it's a lot of especially smaller used dealers. I mean, this is subprime kind of level lending. And whenever they get 60, 90 days, I've seen some floor plans, they're even doing 10% term on a 60-day loan. So
Oof.
a lot of these guys are getting hammered when the demand goes down. And
Right.
that could be one thing that breaks, especially lower end used car market, is that if the demand just keeps on just slowing down, and these guys, as they're not selling cars, if the value of their vehicles are coming down, they're actually gaining cost. So there's going to be
Right.
a time period where they flip and they're going to be underwater on their vehicles they bought wholesale. So
Right. Right.
yeah, we're
And
coming up
not
on
just
that.
one
That's
or two,
close.
but like all of them,
All, their
like
whole lot.
yeah, the
Yeah.
whole lot becomes flipped and underwater. That is an ugly situation. But so do you think that people who are operating like I know your business is a unique business, but do you think that most people that are operating on your level of sales are probably doing better than the ones that are kind of traditionally more, I don't know, sold more expensive used cars or something? Are you in a better
I would
situation or
say
is it just
no.
you guys? Okay, okay.
I would say no, because most of the dealers that are selling the stuff that I sell, they're on floor plans. So whenever they have to sell, like I can go to an auction, I can buy a car for $2,000. It can sit for 2 months and not get somebody to look at it. We're still selling
Right,
for $3,000. I don't have any more money in it. So I can
right,
leave that car at $3,000. But if you get the same dealer that is buying the same kind of car I am, he can't sell it for $3,000. He's got to put 3,500. He's got to put $4,000 on it, because when they buy the car, they still have to pay a fee when they buy the car too. In most cases, on most floor plans, so that
right.
fee might be $300, $400. So a car I have $2,000 in, the exact same car on another dude's lot, they're going to have 2,400 bucks on it just for 30
Right.
days. So if they go over 30 days, if they go over 60 days, then that car that's they've got $2,400 in now becomes 2,800 bucks.
Right.
And they don't have money to begin with. So if they take a
Yeah.
loss on these cars, they got to come up with the difference.
Yeah. And so basically any profit they're looking at just gets squeezed and squeezed, and their only option is
Yep.
to raise the price, but that means it's less likely to sell. So, oh, ugly. And do those dealers, when they get to that situation, will they turn around and try to put those back up on auction again, or
They will, but so all dealers know who they're buying from when they buy. So when a car
Gotcha.
comes to auction and it's being sold by independent dealer, what
Right.
I see and what other dealers see is that, okay, they couldn't sell it on their lot. So what makes me think I can sell it on my lot? Or
Right.
there's something wrong because they're not going to send their good cars to auction.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so I don't if it's got an independent dealer name on the car, I don't even look at it. I don't care what it is.
Okay. Interesting. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. So you had this Corvette that was the saga of the Corvette that was on the lot.
Yeah.
Did it sell yet or not? Has it disappeared?
So
Or
I actually didn't want now when I go to these auctions, I'm working them too. So I can't pay
yeah.
attention to every little storyline
No,
I'm
no,
going
I
through on my
know.
channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so this Corvette, we're on week 8 now. It ran through the auction. I missed it. I didn't see if it sold or not, but I'll be able to check in on it again Tuesday and
Right.
see if it's still at the sale. If it's still at the sale, obviously it didn't sell.
Yeah.
But even if it's not there, there's a chance it still didn't sell. They might have taken it back to their lot, but it's week 8, so they're trying to sell it at auction. I feel like if it's not there, then they sold it. So they're probably not going to take it back to their lot at this point.
Right. Right. I got you. But I guess that just indicates the range of this. We're not just talking about $3,000 to $5,000 cars that are having problems right now. That's
$45,000 car.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you said it was like a 2017 or something like that. It's a pretty good car. I mean, it looks like a nice car. So
Yeah. I think
um,
it's a 2017. It had 15,000 miles on it. It's a
yeah.
Stingray.
Yeah.
It brought $45,000 last week when I watched it, and they no sold it at that. So
Right.
they might have 60 grand in this car, and they're just not ready to take a haircut on it. But
Right.
somebody's probably getting fired over that car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that was probably like a new car dealership and it was a trade-in or something? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a trade-in. I think because it's clean, but it's not clean enough on the insides where they would have had it on their front line. So it was
Oh,
probably a
okay.
trade-in. Yeah,
Gotcha.
and there's probably a rookie trade-in manager that said, okay, here's the values of it. It's $65,000 car. We'll give him 60 grand. We're gonna make 5 grand, and then the
Right.
demand just shut off, and
Right.
now he's having to rep this car going through this auction, and he's like, man, I can't take this car back and show a $15,000 loss. I'm gonna have to look for another job.
Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
ooh, that is ugly. Wow. So, obviously, one major factor in what's going on right now is just inflation and the fact that more importantly, the fact that interest rates have gone up so drastically. So that's obviously a huge factor in our consumers' buying ability. But it seems like from your videos that you're also kind of blaming a lot of these car dealerships for the
Yeah.
situation they've got in. So I don't know if you want to expand on that for like the used car dealerships, the new car dealerships, both, if they're
So
different. Yeah.
So we can go back to this vet and just use that example. So
Okay.
there's a term in the auction language that says first loss, best loss, and this was true 2 years before the pandemic. When normal times, you take your car to auction. If you traded for it bad, if you bought it bad, whatever, you need to take your lumps, get rid of it because next week it's going to bring less money. So
Right.
over the last 2 years, dealers didn't have to do that because there was these cars were bringing so much crazy money. Even if you got in the car bad, you could get out of it. You just have to wait for the right two bidders. But
Right.
these bidders don't exist anymore because a lot of the guys who buy that kind of stuff, a lot of the dealers that buy those more expensive cars, they are scared to death of them right now because you
Okay.
can't get loans on them. You can't get these customers that can come up with the difference of the down payment that they need because the banks are now only wanting to loan 80% of the value. So nobody who can afford that is going to buy that kind of car right now.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense. And certainly also in a recession, you might, I don't know, if times are good, you're like, yeah, I'm going to buy me a cool, fancy car. But,
Yeah,
right now, everyone's
toys
belt
get hit
tightening.
in a recession. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, especially that kind of car that's a more like prestige not necessary car, right? I guess you could say something like that. So yeah, that's really, really rough. The I also wonder though, like if a lot of these dealerships, so you think a lot of this is just greed, that they've just gotten used to like the cash cow. Like the last couple of years have been so good that they've just sort of gotten into this habit of going like things are going to remain that way.
So I think the beginning of it was maybe the last couple months they weren't ready to just flip the switch. They were still thinking it was good, but now it's
Right.
getting into kind of a panic phase and they can't take these losses. I mean, these new dealers, they have interest payments too. They don't buy their cars outright. So
Right.
they owe money. Now their percentages are going to be way less that they have to actually pay on their floors. But they're still, if they've traded in these cars bad, if they bought them 3 months ago, the market's dropped on the wholesale level at least 20%. So if
Yeah.
they have cars that they're $1
Yeah.
million in that are at the wholesale and they've been bringing them to auction and not selling them, they've lost $200,000 just
Right.
like that.
Right. And what do you think the situation is with consumers? Because the exact same thing is true for us. Like, right, if I went out and purchased a car for 40 grand in September, that car might only be worth 30, 32 now because been a massive drop. And so I could owe more, especially if the bank loaned me 140% of the loan, right, of the value. I could be underwater in that car significantly. So what do you think is going to happen with consumers? Because do you think consumers are just going to walk away from some of these loans and just say like, nah, it's not worth it? Or,
So this is my biggest concern about the used car market right now is
okay.
that that example we gave earlier where a customer bought this vehicle for $16,000 8 months ago, a year ago, and now the car is worth $8,000.
Right.
So they can look around at other dealer lots and they can see the same car that they paid $16,000 for, and that car is being sold for $10,000, but they still owe 14 grand on that car.
Right.
So I, I mean, I know that a lot of people don't want to get hit with the credit, but we would have thought that in 2008 too, when people walked away from their houses.
Right.
So my biggest concern is that people walk away from loans, and then at that point, the banks are going to start getting hit.
Right. And when the banks get hit, that means that the cash flow is not available for other people
They'll
to
even
purchase
tighten up
cars.
more
And
than what's
yeah,
going on right now. Yeah.
right. And of course, interest rates rise because there's higher risk. And so then, it's just a really bad cycle that goes on. Yeah. Again, not to use my son as an example, but we kind of warned him this was going to be a bad purchase, but he purchased a Chevy Silverado with like 115,000 on it. Anyway, at the height, like 2021, end of that year. And we were like, just buy the cheapest car you can get with cash right now. Wait till prices come back down again and then buy a truck. And right now, what he owes on that car, I think it's just about even now, but he's had the car for 18 months and been paying it off. And it's still just barely even to what the
Right.
value of the truck is right now. So it's like, oof, it's rough. It's a
So
tough
yeah,
situation.
another issue with that is somebody in, let's say, your son's situation. Maybe they signed a longer loan. I know a lot of these
Right.
newer cars, a lot of these are slightly used
5 years.
cars. They're
Yeah.
starting to get 5, 6, 7 year loans
Yeah.
on these cars, which is ridiculous.
Right.
So if they bought it a year ago and they sign up for one of these loans and their monthly payments are lower because they had the extension of the years on the loan, what
Right.
happens if they wreck it? So
Oh,
they
yeah.
have to have this gap insurance to be able to cover the loss because it's this car that the brand new car that might be $60,000 a year later, that car might only be worth 25 grand right now.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a brutal that was the reason why he had to buy the truck was because somebody totaled his vehicle. So,
Yeah.
but at the time it was great because the old vehicle was actually worth more than what he bought it for because everything was so completely nuts but now if the wreck happened now when it was worth less, that's a horrible situation
Right.
because what you're saying is basically if that happened, the person would actually owe the insurance company whatever that gap is or whatever to
Yeah.
pay off to get rid of the car to pay it all off. So yeah, that's just an ugly situation all around. One other thing that was really interesting to me was I think you said, I don't know if it was Forerunners or something, but you said if a dealership, like a new dealership, they get one from the Toyota factory and they have it sitting on the lot for a couple of weeks and then they get new ones in, that they kind of have to push the old one out to auction because they don't want old stock sitting in there. Because prices are variable and you don't want this older vehicle sitting around either looking like it's cut rate. And so why am I paying more for these other vehicles than the old,
Right.
but it's a really ugly situation with that too.
Yeah, so when they bring in this new inventory, they're going to have 4 or 5 other cars that are very similar to the same one that
Right.
they're bringing in. So if they actually cut the prices on the ones that they have on their lot, then when someone comes in to buy, all these cars are competing against each other on the lot for the customer. So if that customer comes in and sees the exact same car or something very similar, for a cheaper price, obviously they're gonna buy the cheaper one. But the
Right.
dealer doesn't want to sell the cheaper one. They want to sell the one that they just got in because they're going to hit a home run on it. So that's another reason why these dealers will ship out. And we're seeing a lot of new inventory hit the wholesale market. And
Right.
it's just it blowing me away. Like I did a video 2 days ago that I released. There's a 2023 Hyundai Tuscan, whatever, with Santa Fe, whatever they are. But it was a 2023 model, and that dealer sent it to auction to dump it, and they have to do that because they want to hit home runs, they want to keep their margins on the new ones,
Right.
but it's so frustrating to see that because prices can't come down if they keep trying to do that, and they're
Yeah.
not going to come
Yeah.
down, especially for new vehicles if they just keep this set amount. I know a lot of the manufacturers are coming out saying that they're gonna raise the MSRP, so that we're going backwards when the demand
Right.
is tightening up. I don't understand why they don't see this implosion that's coming. If you raise
Right.
prices when demand's going down, you're not gonna sell anything.
Yeah. Let me table that for just a second because there was news that just came out today that ties into that. But first of all, I'm who buys, so this is a brand new vehicle, right? With maybe like 300 miles on it or something. So this still registered
Right.
as a new vehicle, could have the little window
Yeah.
stickers on it, all that stuff. Who buys those at auction at that point?
So there's some higher end used car dealers that will keep that kind
Okay.
of stuff on their lot. Sure, you've drove down the highway or whatever and seen these bigger used car dealers that have 2020s, 2021s. Those are the kind of dealers that buy that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because that's not even really a used car yet, right? I mean, it still
No,
doesn't have
it's
enough miles on it. So yeah.
so I watched that one go through the lane, and actually how they marketed it on the screen, they'll put any kind of announcements if it's salvage, if it's flood or whatever.
Right.
But the announcement they had on that particular car was car not titled yet, still branded
Oh,
new vehicle. Yeah.
wow. Wow. That's crazy. That in some ways that might be the scariest thing of all is that you've got brand new vehicles that are getting put on auction. Wow. Yeah, speaking of that, the thing that was really interesting, and I know you don't focus on EV cars at all, but I sent you the video. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but Tesla basically in the United States just dropped their vehicles by between 6 and 23%, which was just massive price cuts. And I think, we really have no idea what the ramifications are going to be at this point, but it seems like that's going to have a major effect on the auto industry because you're suddenly getting electric vehicle prices that are going to, especially with the tax credits and all that stuff that's going to happen on top of that, they're going to drop down into the new car, like, similar, not like BMWs or Mercedes, but it's going to drop down into like Toyota range, right? It's going to kind of get into that
Yeah.
mass market range.
So obviously you cover this way more than I do, but it
Yeah.
was like a genius move by Tesla, right? Because it gets them into the range to be able to get the $7,500 credit.
I know. I
And
didn't think.
yeah,
Yeah, I honestly didn't think because their Model Y, for example, was 66 grand or approximately that, and they dropped
yeah.
it to 53. And I was like, who does that? That's crazy.
So
It's like-
so I looked up a Chevy Bolt after I read that info,
right.
and the Chevy Bolt, I think the MSRP on that's like 55 grand. So the only reason someone, I mean, if you want an EV, I'm assuming I don't follow the EV market, but if you want an EV, I'm assuming you want Tesla. So the only reason you would go with some other like a Chevy Bolt is because price. So
Right.
now you can get a Tesla for the same price as a Chevy Bolt. They're going to have to lower the prices if they can. I know
Right.
that a lot of the manufacturing for Tesla they actually have in house where a lot of the parts and stuff that like Chevy and Ford are doing for their EVs, they outsource a
Right.
lot of that stuff, correct? So
Yeah.
what kind of margin um,
It's
what
actually so
constraints is going to
GM.
happen in Tesla? Yeah.
So here's the margins. GM loses $9 on every EV that they sell. So they're
That
actually
that's a
losing.
good
Yeah.
business model. Yeah.
And also, here's the scary thing. The Chevy Bolt really doesn't compete against the Tesla Model Y. It competes against the Tesla Model 3 in terms of approximate size and stuff. And that thing, the effective price is around 36,500 now with the tax credit.
So why
So
why would you want to why would even want to
no,
even think about buying a Bolt? I don't
they're not.
and
That's
and they
the
and they
yeah.
I saw one. I saw one at auction the other day. I put that on the video, just like a
Yeah.
30-second little clip or whatever. But I thought that kind of stuff was in high demand. I'm surprised to see any kind of EV hit an auction right now.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you about. So I know you focus on gas cars and stuff like that, but what have you, is the Bolt the only EV that you've seen on auction at all?
No, I've seen more Teslas than anything else, but it's just
Okay.
because of the amount of Teslas versus what
Right.
Bolts are in the
Right.
system. But you're really not going to see a lot of EVs hit the wholesale market anyway, because you got to think the average consumer when they buy a new car, they
Right.
keep it eight. Like I think it's like the number I saw earlier was 8.4 years.
Okay.
So 8 years ago, people weren't buying EVs. Really, there
Right.
wasn't a big market for them. So you're not going to see that trade in, the sell through of them hitting the wholesale, because we haven't hit that time frame where people were actually mass buying
Right.
EVs yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, 2019 would be the first year that really you could talk about some
Yeah.
significant numbers in the hundreds of
So
thousands. So yeah.
2025 around that area, that's when
Yeah.
we'll probably start seeing more of them.
Okay. But you do see some of them. I'm curious
Mhm.
why they would end up at auction as opposed to. It seems like they have enough cachet that like a used dealer would want to put those on the front line and say like, hey, I've driven by. I actually stopped in one time at I think it was a Toyota dealership, and I was like, hey, I saw your Tesla out there, and so they talked me up, and then they wouldn't stop calling me forever. So, but
So dealerships really aren't set up to handle a lot of EVs. I mean, there's
okay.
the dealerships don't have charging stations sitting on their lot to be able to
Mm,
handle that
true,
kind of stuff. So
true.
that would be my opinion why a dealer would just be like, you know what, I just don't want an EV
Okay.
on my lot.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's not really their market, right? If you're selling Subarus or something, it's like, why do you want an EV on your lot? So yeah, okay.
Right.
That does make sense. Okay. Interesting. But yeah, so I'm still processing this information because I was like, I can't believe Tesla did this. But of course, their margins, I think their operating margins are like after the paying all the stuff that they have to pay is like in the upper teens, right? Like 19, 18%. So
Yeah.
they have the ability to make these major cuts. But like I said, GM already losing $9 a car on EVs. Ford makes a couple $100 per EV, so they're making nothing. They're all making money on their gas cars. So you're talking about the problem is that nobody wants to buy a gas car right now. And at the same time, particularly Tesla has just went like and just dropped the price. So
I mean, so it might just crush the actual EV departments of like especially Ford and GM, because
right,
if they're already losing money, even if it's just a small amount, I
right.
mean, they can't afford to lose $5, $8, $10,000
No,
per EV putting out just to try to make it into the future. It's
right.
not. I mean, it won't last.
It's going to be rough. But I'm thinking even beyond that, though. I mean, this could actually put the real hurt on their gas cars. When you get an EV that starts to drop down into the range of the gas cars, and if people want to buy EVs instead of gas cars, there's the big reason people couldn't afford or was they couldn't afford it, right? They're like, oh, I can't afford a $65,000 car. There's no way in the world. So I'm going to buy something else. But if it starts to drop into that same, range, um, yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. And of course, a lot of these companies, you think about like, Japanese car companies and things like that. But if the car's not made in the US, it's not eligible for the tax credit. So
Right.
you also get that factor too. So there's not that many companies that are actually even eligible for this $7,500 tax credit.
Right.
So yeah, it could be
And
absolutely crazy.
I mean, and Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, I don't even think they have a EV product, or if they do, it's not much that I know about.
Right. I think they've got, weirdly enough, hybrids actually count for some hybrids count for the credit.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think
I didn't know that.
I think there's a couple of Jeep models. I know Jeep. I can't remember what else Stellantis has got. I don't know. I just call them Chrysler. It's like I can't get used to Stellantis. But anyway,
Oh, yeah, I don't
yeah,
think I'll ever call them
right.
Stellantis, yeah.
But anyway, but there's a few models that are out there, but not a ton. And so yeah, it's I don't know. It's a brave new world, that's for
I
sure.
think since you cover Tesla, I think the one thing that could potentially go right for another automaker is Ford with the F-150. I
Right.
think that's the only thing that could really trouble Tesla, and it's just, I mean, that particular a truck. I've
Yep.
been waiting for my Cybertruck for what, 6 years now.
I
So
know. So you have one on pre-order too?
no. I never had
Oh,
one.
okay.
But I
Oh,
remember
gotcha.
when they, however many, my wife
Yeah.
showed me what it was. It
Years
was
ago.
like a Cybertruck's like $35,000. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Right.
Now it's, I bet if they tried to release one now, it'd be 65, 70 grand.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, we'll see. I put in a pre-order for the one that was, I think, a 39,000 was the cheapest one or something
Yeah.
like that. So I put in a pre-order for that, but of course they've canceled that version, but I've still got, so at
That's never
some
happening.
point they're going to tell us what the prices are.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the F-150 Lightning, I've seen it a couple of times. I've never gotten to drive in it, but I've seen it like at showrooms and it's nice. It's a nice truck.
Yeah.
Um,
The only thing
so
is
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to get enough torque in those EVs because I mean you got to go
right.
you got to go to work in those F-150s. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that'd be my concern. But I mean the technology is continuously getting better.
Right. Right. Yeah, I would think that the big thing would honestly be the range with the batteries. And that'll be interesting for the Cybertruck too. It's like if you put, you know, 1,000 pounds in the back and then you haul 2,000 or 3,000 pounds on a trailer, what kind of range do you
Right.
get, when you start loading it up like that? So that's going to be a big issue. It's not like you can just
Right.
go to the gas station and fill up in 5 minutes. So it's going to take some time. So, all right. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to finish with one big picture question. If you're a person looking, let's just striate the market here a little bit. So people looking at, a couple $1,000 car and then a $10,000 car, a $20,000 car, and then a new car. So like in that range for each group of people, when do you think is going to be a good time to be looking, including now, if you think now's a good time, although I don't know that you think that's true.
So I'll add in another kind of
Okay.
variable there. It depends on if you can wait more than about 6 months or if you're going to need one sometime soon. So on the
Right.
lower tier of cars, if you need to get in a car relatively soon, you need to buy it right now because
Oh,
in a month and a half from now, it happens every year. There's tax time. People get tax checks. The prices of used vehicles, especially $10,000 and under, are going to spike. They're not going to spike for very long. There's always, and it doesn't matter if we're in a pandemic or if we're in 2015. It happens every year,
right.
right? At the end of February, beginning of March, there's a spike in used car prices that happens at auction. These dealers get over leveraged. They have to get too much money in cars because all these people rush to these used car dealerships. They spend their tax checks on vehicles. Dealers empty their lots, especially on the lower tier, and then they rush to auction and the price goes up. So right now I'm loading up. I usually keep 80 cars throughout the year, but during tax time I'll have 150 cars this year.
Wow.
And
So
we'll
you're just
sell
packing
all of
them in
them
just
in
as
about
tight as
10
you
days.
can get them. You just,
Well,
okay.
we'll have a storage lot too,
Okay.
but we'll sell all of them in 10 to 15 days.
Oh my
And then
gosh, that's
we
crazy.
go on vacation from buying cars because the prices are so elevated.
Right.
So if you're in that higher tier, if you're over 10,000, okay, let me go back. So if you need a car soon, go ahead and buy it now. If it's under $10,000, if you can wait till as long as you can because the prices are just going to continue to go lower after we get this tax time hit.
Right.
I'm telling my viewers, if you're in that range, the first time I would even begin to look is at the end of summer. Um,
Okay.
but I really think December of this year is going to be when we start to hit a floor on a lot of these prices. Um, okay, so the higher end models, they're not really hit by tax time, not that much. There might be a little bump, um, but still, it's that same kind of category of thing. If you don't need to buy a car right now, wait. And I wouldn't even look until the end of summer. And if you're at a dealership at that point and they want to charge dealer markups, if they want to charge any extra fees or whatever, go somewhere else because
Gotcha.
right now you should not be paying anything over MSRP. I don't care what dealership you're going to. They don't have leverage anymore. It's not a buyer's
Right.
market yet, but it's not a seller's market anymore either.
Okay.
So we're right in that middle range. And if you can wait, I'm telling people wait.
Right. So you're saying eventually it's going to shift over and become a buyer's market as
Yeah.
by the end of 2023-ish, something like
Yes,
that. So yeah.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So good. Patience is always a good thing.
Right.
If you can do that. Okay. And if you were in the market for a new car, like same advice, just basically
Yeah, same thing. I
yeah.
mean, these new car dealers, they're starting to send new car inventory to auction. So they're starting to
Yeah.
feel the pain. But still, I mean, I'm hearing things from my viewers that they're still seeing some dealerships are trying to add on this $6,000 dealer fee, whatever. I need to add on a
Right.
dealer fee. I need somebody to pay me for my time.
Yeah.
But they just it's ridiculous that they would do that. Just sell the car for what it is.
Right.
But if you see any kind of those fees, just leave the dealership, go somewhere else.
Right.
They have multiple Toyota dealerships, Ford dealerships. They all sell the same stuff. You can go
Right.
somewhere else and buy it.
Right. Yeah. That's the truth. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brandon. And again, for people who
Thanks
are
for having
not
me.
watching your channel, definitely check out the link in the description so you can check out your channel. Because yeah, it's like I've been educated a ton by watching your videos, so I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate that as well. All right. And for
Yeah,
everybody
thanks for
else,
having me. I really
everybody,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
have a great weekend. I'll probably post this on Saturday so everybody can relax and think about new and used cars this weekend. And in the meantime, everybody have a lovely day. Bye-bye.